Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast with your host, John Cass. Together, we'll take a closer look at the ins and outs of marketing through an agile lens. You'll learn from interviews with top agile thought leaders and practitioners and gain fresh new insights for your journey. Let's get ready to dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast. I'm your host, John Cass, here in Boston, Massachusetts. Today, I'll be interviewing Stacey Ackerman, who is a well-known Agile marketing leader. She founded and ran her own consultancy for more than a decade and has been a global speaker and regular contributor on Agile marketing for Forbes and MarTech. Stacey has worked with several clients, including MetLife, Premier Health, Vizient, and more, to improve marketing agility and operations. In her most recent role as head of marketing, she incorporated Agile and AI to scale her small in-house team. Stacey, welcome. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive into Agile marketing once again.
Well, thanks for having me back again, John. Great to be here.
Yeah. We've had another session previously, another podcast, but it's great to chat about this topic of AI and agile marketing, especially with the evolving nature of marketing. Could you tell me about your use of AI for marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was most recently in a marketing leadership position, and like many of us, you have to do more with less. And it was also in the life sciences industry, which is pretty niche. And so I didn't necessarily have that life sciences background myself. So I relied on a lot of my SMEs in-house who do have that expertise. And my thing with AI is you want to make it help you, but you want to make it authentic. And I think that is kind of the key, marrying those two things together. You still need to sound like a real person, and that real subject matter expert really, the idea should stem from them. So for a lot of the content marketing initiatives, how I incorporated these was getting on a Zoom call like this, asking questions to the subject matter experts, having them talk just naturally and authentically, not in a prepared or scripted way. And then kind of using that recording, downloading that, putting it into an AI tool like Perplexity or ChatGPT, and having that kind of spit out like a blog or a social post or whatever content we're trying to derive from it. But then going back, of course, and adding our brand voice to it, adding just making sure that we're taking that subject matter expert, we're taking that AI that's going to kind of help shape it, and then taking myself as a marketing person and saying, does this meet our brand voice? Is this communicating the right way? And so I think when you can combine all of those things, you can come through and scale a lot faster with a small team. But still sound authentic and still sound credible. And nobody wants to read something that looks like it came straight from ChatGPT.
Right. No, indeed. Did you use the same content in different ways at all using AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that's one of the pieces of agile marketing, right? Is like, how can you repurpose content? How can you streamline it? So we could use that same content. It might be an email, but you're going to reformulate it. You're going to maybe take that content and make a series of small social posts from it. You may take that same content and turn it into a webinar. So I always try to do things kind of in a theme on a topic. And when you get some good content like that from a stakeholder, you can really leverage it in many, many different ways. And I feel like this is how, as marketing leaders, when you're always asked to, support more products, more business lanes with fewer and fewer team members, it is definitely a way to do that. But you have to be so careful, because I think there are too many people that have gone the other direction and be like, AI will just replace what I do, and I'll just push it in there and push it out, and I'm going to go faster, faster, faster. And I think there has to be that balance of quality and authenticity for sure while you're doing that.
Well, it also, to me, speaks to the question of what is marketing and why have marketers, right? Where AI or ChatGTP or the different systems out there are not marketers per se because they're not making the decision. They're not that ChatGTP isn't the prompt engineer, the marketers are per se. So, do you think it's sort of revealing more that conflict or discussion in the industry where marketing isn't always understood and what the value of marketers are?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we might be facing a period where some CEOs may try to say, well, we don't need marketers. We'll just use AI and use the people we have here and we'll get rid of it all. And I think we might be facing that in the short term, but I don't think it's sustainable. I think they're going to quickly realize you need the human expertise along with it. And AI feels a little bit like, the internet .com boom on steroids, right? Times, a million, where, we're going through this weird period in time and it's going to level out. But right now, I think people are like, well, can I just get rid of my team? And, there's some roles you might be able to, right? You may not have to hire, for instance, like a marketing content writer that's an expert. If you have an expert in house, you might be able to do things with fewer people, but you definitely need you need someone controlling the AI that understands the strategy behind it, understands the customers behind it.
When I've used AI, what's exciting for me has been in any teams where I've managed or worked on a team, we're always under resourced. So with AI, it always seems like, oh, finally we get to do the stuff using the team members so they're not exhausted at the end of the day. I mean, is that sort of is the glass half full or half empty? That's kind of how I'm looking at it, which is I'm thinking that it's actually going to help fill the glass. So, what about your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you can look at it at both ways. I think in a way it is making our lives as marketers much easier. I feel like from a market research perspective too, is so much faster, right? Information's at our fingertips in a second. We don't have to, do long research, projects per se. You can get that so much quicker. And that's where the agility fits in, right? You can go from research to execution very, very fast, faster than we've ever been able to do before. And so, as someone, towards the end of my career has been doing this a long time, it can feel scary too, but I think you have to embrace it. It is going to be with us in the future. And so, learning how to adapt and be agile ourselves as marketers is going to be really critical right now.
I really like that point about the research. You're right, absolutely, Stacey. That really helps with reducing the amount of time that it takes to do things. Let's go to our sponsor.
Hey marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
Join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
How do you think the use of AI by marketers is going to impact Agile and how marketing managers work?
Yeah, so I've worked with a lot of clients, from big clients to small clients, and I feel like there's two different reasons they're going after Agile. And the big clients, it's usually to make things go faster and to speed up things. because they're too process heavy, they're too slow, they're too bureaucratic. On the flip side, I've worked with some small clients who've used Agile marketing because they're too chaotic. They have no systems in place, and it's sort of haphazard. Um, so I would answer that differently based on the size of client or the type of client. But if you take like the large clients, for example, that I've had to work with, and you know, a couple of years ago trying to say that you could, you know, get things done in a 2 week iteration or a 1 week iteration, I think they looked at me like I had three heads.
Right.
Now I would say if you can't get things done in a day or two iteration, something's wrong, right? Because we have these powerful tools right at our side right now. And so I think even the idea of, you know, traditional 2 week sprint right now is almost slow, right?
Right. Well, you've got me thinking there. You painted that picture with large clients where it was about making things faster because the companies were focusing. It's never about speed. The speed comes from the focus. And then the other was the small companies by getting a hold of the chaos. Does it now mean that for large companies, agile is going to be seen as a way to manage the pace of work? So agile is really about managing work. So if work gets faster and the pace gets faster, does it now mean that agile is even more important, say, for large companies? And how does that also, in fact, impact small as well?
Well, I think that if you look at agile as a mindset, we all have to be really agile right now, right? Because everybody's dealing with this like uncertain time and how are we doing things and how can we adapt? And if you think of agility like changing and being adaptable, versus maybe a large company that's been very set in their ways, you absolutely have to be right now. Everyone's pivoting, everybody's experimenting, and that's the philosophy behind agile, right? And so whether they're making a, you know, conscious effort to do an agile transformation, they're doing it whether they want to or not, or they're probably going to not survive, right? So everyone's pivoting from their product strategy to their marketing strategy to their, you know, marketing cadence, and so it's very disruptive. Um, but agile is like it's less you know, like a product we're selling agile marketing and more like we're just all doing that right now. So I feel like that's a little bit of the evolution where it was novel before, you know, 10, 15 years ago, like, oh my gosh, we can speed things up so much and we can you know, be working a little bit more collaboratively. um, I think that's still true. I think we still, you know, need to be working collaboratively and having that team focus. But it is AI into it is sort of making agile just kind of happen in a natural way. Does that make sense?
It does. And I also wonder, you've got me thinking, I wonder if the structure and the traditions in Agile, the forms, are helping to provide a framework for, will help provide a framework for marketers about handle the pace of change. I wonder if that is part of it.
Yeah, I definitely think it can help. So if you think about like a Scrum framework or a Kanban
Yeah.
flow, when you add those frameworks to it, yeah, I think it absolutely can help manage things, help manage the chaos. I was definitely doing what I would say 1 week sprints when I was leading a department, um, and we were doing a lot. Like we are getting a lot of throughput in those 1 week sprints, and it wasn't so much of a like you see in traditional IT where you're trying to build a product in a sprint, but it was more of a planning cycle of like, let's plan a week out. Let's plan bigger on a roadmap, but then have our day to day kind of tactical things that we're doing kind of in a 1 week sprint. And really, you could be doing those in like a couple days now.
Right.
And I think planning a couple weeks sprints is almost too slow, just with AI. Like we're moving so fast.
Well, do you think, why do you, so if the sprint cycles are shortening, do you think that's because you're getting the pace at which you try something is speeding up, and so therefore the feedback loop is improving. The you're getting shorter is that why?
Yeah, absolutely. And right, the upfront research isn't taking as long. So
Right.
that was always kind of a thing that would slow teams down. We need to, do our research first, and we need to, really take a couple weeks to plan something and before we can execute it. And even though Agile was trying to say shorten that, now we can use AI and we can get research done in minutes and
Right.
and execute faster and get real-time feedback. So I think that's what's shortening it.
Right, right. Well, there's the issue of avatars, right? I mean, there's this discussion about using. Well, I always think, and cuts across any company, small or large. I always think a marketer can do more work on their personas and customer journey mapping, right? In fact, I always think that you're always going to learn more, and things are changes in the marketplace. Competitors are changing, so yeah, you should be checking up at least on a monthly basis to see if those are good. But I also think that marketers are so busy working on the campaigns they don't always spend that time. But I wonder if this idea of the persona avatars will mean that marketers will work more on that, and they'll give more time to it in management of their work units using Agile. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with persona avatar, so you'll have to fill me in on that one. I haven't heard of that. I can say that having led a marketing team, because the executions were happening so much faster as a leader, it did give me actually more time to do research and
Right.
more time to do strategy than before, where you might be, like you said, bogged down with the execution details of a campaign. So I think um, when you're able to streamline that, and just taking like the content example and how much faster that's going, you do have more time to then build strategy back in and consumer research. And so it is shifting it. I think it is going to help teams be less just do. And obviously that's going to be mindset of leadership as well, to say that this is just as important, that learning and that understanding customers. And I think that's a balance as marketers in any world. We're always trying to strike that balance, right?
Right. No, indeed. Yeah, it's when do you stop doing too much research? And that's the reason why Agile and cycles are good, is because you have this framework that encourages you to say, well, we've done enough and we're going to try it and see what happens, and then have a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Still very there and it's alive. I think the hype is on AI, but they complement each other.
They do. I've been looking at this for a few years as you have, and it just really struck me all of a sudden. Wow, Agile's, I mean, I always thought that Agile was a helpful tool, but even more important because of these chaotic, there's a lot of fear and doubt out there, right? And I just think having that process to hand can help marketers. Let's go to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
How would you talk to marketers about that, in how, with this situation with AI, how Agile can help them to manage their work?
Yeah, I think still the idea of testing and learning is a really valid concept, right? And AI can help us do that at a much more rapid pace, right? Testing and learning by experimentation. And like I said, and not having really heavy upfront research cycles, but being able to utilize AI to research quickly, test and learn quickly, pivot quickly, understand what's working, understand what's not working, and using, data, of course, data-driven decision making, which is also apparent to agile marketing. On the very like tactical side of agile marketing, I always find, sprints and sprint boards and visualizing work and all those kinds of things that go with it helpful in any case, right? That is how I work, regardless. That is how I have always worked. It helps with focus. It helps with transparency. It helps with everyone on the team being on the same page and having, the same end goal in mind at the end of the week or the end of the 2 weeks or whatever it may be.
Right. Well, what do you think? What do you think will happen in the marketplace if everybody's using AI and the content volume improves? I mean, how do you think? Do you think people will just churn out more content, or the content will get better? What do you think is going to happen, and how will that affect marketers and the competitive nature of their markets, and how do you think agile marketers can respond if there's too much content?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the content is definitely going to get flooded. It already is flooded. I think it's going to get even more flooded because people who can't write suddenly are putting stuff out there. I think what's going to win out with content is people that really take the time to make it sound like a human and a real voice and an authentic position, right? And so I think that has to be there. And those who are just dumping stuff right from chat and throwing in a blog, and yes, they have content out there. Maybe it impacts SEO a little bit for them, but it's not sustainable, I don't think, in that matter.
Right. Now that makes sense. Well, going back to what you said earlier about experimentation with Agile, maybe the thing for marketers to focus on is you're learning as a marketer, but what you're also doing is focusing on the customer and learning about them and what's important to them. And if you just do a better job of that, you're always going to be ahead of the game,
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And so I feel like our fundamentals as marketers will not change, right? Like the fundamentals of listening to the customer and being an authentic voice and having a consistent brand and all of those things will not change. And you still need a leader that understands those things and that can sift through the noise of AI to get to where you need to go, right?
Great. Well, Stacey, thank you so much. I think those are great insights for marketers to use about thinking how to approach using AI in their marketing and how it affects the process of using Agile to manage their work as well. So it's great discussion today. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, thanks, John. I enjoyed it myself.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive into Agile Marketing with John Cass. My thanks to Stacey, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast. Be sure and subscribe to our show and leave a review to let us know what you thought of today's episode.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.